The FBI says an anonymous caller claimed a chemical weapon was on board the aircraft. It landed safely, and a search turned up no weapons. And sources are telling our local Fox affiliate of 2 additional flights coming into JFK reporting the same concerns. One, a Saudi Airlines flight, and the other, American Airlines. The American Airlines plane landed safely.
Anonymous phone threats are made against American airliners. Military fighter jets are put into play to escort a plane to an American airport. And we find ourselves once again right back at the beginning of our terrorist nightmare. A concern about these terrorists using aircraft as weapons and potential tombs for unbelievers. Let's go ahead and open the Tuesday dance card. Let's get right to the news. First up, Washington Post reporter Christopher Ingraham, joined by veteran New York attorney and legal expert Adam Thompson. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed.
Let's go ahead and get right to it. Chris, I'm going to start with you because here we have a U.S.-bound flight, 2 U.S. fighter jets escorting an Air France airliner bound for New York City. We have Delta saying 2 of its international planes have also been threatened. And while they say that these are not credible threats, once again, the American public's got to be back on its heels again. Where do we go from here in trying to make these aircraft safe?
Sure, it's pretty disconcerting. I'd say a couple things. I'd say one thing, based on the reports I read, is that one of these reports was just based on a phone call to the Maryland State Police Office. So, you think about that. Anybody can make a call to any police precinct in the nation and say, "Hey, I've got bombs or chemicals on this plane." I think it really speaks to the amount that any random person can really kind of get the authorities on high alert here. And yes, that's got to be disconcerting for travelers. On the other hand, in order to get this kind of rapid response, there's really a low bar of entry there. So, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, yes, you have to be worried about these threats. On the other hand, just because on the basis that anyone could call this in, I think when the authorities say these aren't credible threats, I think that's something that we can all take heart from.
Adam, I think there's something that we're going to have to realize. From 2001 to right now, this is simply something that we've got to live with. There's really no way to stop it. You can try to find these people, but all it takes is, as really we just talked about it with Christopher, it's a simple phone call that throws everything into disarray.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different era that we're in now. Things are different. We live in an age of terrorism, but you do have to take all of these threats seriously. How can we make the matter better? Just by stepping up training and implementation of all the different resources we have, starting with when people first get to the airport and they go through TSA, make the screening process more secure, make sure everything is searched more thoroughly. Then once people board the plane, have different checks and balances in place, because this is something we got to live with, like you said.
Well, let me say this, Adam, right now. Look, when I fly, I don't care. Search me all you want, X-ray it, that's fine. Take the bags, I don't care. Here, my socks, my shoes, I don't care what it is. Make sure I'm safe and I get to point B. I'm fine with that. I think we just have to realize, let them search whatever they want. Keep me safe, right?
El Al's been doing it for years, and you don't hear many of their planes getting taken over or knocked out of flight. So it works with Israel. Why not here?
All right, let me get to something legal here. And Adam, I'm going to start with you on this. This comes from Austria. A 14-year-old, and this has to do with terrorism, a 14-year-old Austrian schoolboy convicted of planning to bomb a Vienna train station in the name of ISIS and sentenced to 8 months behind bars. Adam, he's 14 years old. How young is too young?
That's a great question. We deal with that every day here in our own criminal justice system. People are maturing at a younger age now. A 13 and 14-year-old today is much different than one 20 years ago, and much, much different than someone from 50 years ago. The age of the internet has changed things. It's very sad when you see many children today who aren't raised with the proper guidance and don't get the proper education, and they don't have the right self-esteem. They get exposed to being manipulated by groups like ISIS, and they get pulled in and drawn in, which is what happened in this case. And we need to do better to prevent this in the future.
Chris, I know we can try and prevent this, but look, we're still dealing with the fact that there are some, and we got to be realistic here. There are 14-year-olds who know exactly what the difference is between right and wrong, but in the same breath, can a 14-year-old really decide they're going to become a terrorist? And where are we going to take this in America?
It's really a tricky problem, isn't it? I think one of it is that what it really speaks to is this battle for hearts and minds that we're seeing here with some of these extremist groups. And where a lot of that is playing out, it's not necessarily playing out on the battlefield, but a lot of it is playing out right on social media. Mm-hmm. And, I think that speaks to a couple things. It speaks to a need for better outreach from authorities and from these organizations that can have good influences on children on social media. It also speaks to a need to have have more creative ways to rehabilitate these people once they've been captured. Because look, you can't take a 14-year-old kid and throw him in jail for the rest of his life on the basis of what he did on Twitter when he was in middle school. We have to have some smarter solutions to deal with these, and I think our authorities are just starting to grapple with that, particularly when we see groups like ISIS that have become very adept at using social media to increase their ranks.
If I had kids, I would take the Twitter and the phone and the computer away. I think I'd throw it in a river right away. Here comes something else that is really very serious. In Baltimore, 29 people shot, 9 dead over the holiday weekend, the deadliest month Baltimore has seen in more than 15 years. Christopher, there are people right now who are just basically trying to figure this out, but some saying cops are gun shy right now, especially in Baltimore. They're afraid of what happened. They're not going out on patrol. They're not arresting people, and some people out on the streets are taking advantage of it. Do you fly with that?
It's a really vexing issue. Like you mentioned, this is the deadliest month in Baltimore since 1999, and the month isn't even over yet. I think there's a couple things going on here. One of them is that what we're seeing coming out of Baltimore is you're seeing community members saying one thing, you're seeing the cops saying another. Both community members and cops are pointing the finger at each other. It speaks to really an erosion of trust between these two groups. If things are going to get better there, then that relationship has to be healed. The other interesting thing about Baltimore is that just looking in the wake of the Freddie Gray killings, what police are saying is they're saying, look, we're hesitant. We don't want to use force because every time we go out there are 20 people on the corner taking pictures of us with their phones. And you can understand that concern, but on the other hand, what police are always telling citizens is, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear from law enforcement. Well, I think that kind of applies to police too. If they're doing their jobs properly and in accordance with the law, they should have nothing to fear either from citizens who are recording them and documenting the interactions that happen on the street level every day.
And you'd have to say, Adam, that there are people on the other side who would say, wait a minute, we do fear the cops, because even though we have phones and even though we've recorded them before, things have happened and we have seen them doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, it's fair to say that, but in the same breath, I do think that this is cops who, quite frankly, don't want to be caught on camera, don't want to be brought up on charges. I think they're afraid to do their job. What does that say about the cops, though?
Well, I think you nailed it, Ed. I think they are gun shy, and it's unfortunate. What this demonstrates more than anything is the real distrust between local law enforcement in Baltimore and the citizens of Baltimore. You have to have both meshing together. They have to be able to work together, communicate together, and most importantly, trust each other. This demonstrates a huge breakdown in the trust system, because the police can't go and investigate these crimes if members of the community don't want to work with them. They have to get leads. They have to find people of interest. And if the people in the community won't give them that information, then they can't do their job. If they can't do their job, then these violent crimes continue, and innocent women and children and people are getting killed on the streets every day.
I think I only got 30 seconds left, so Christopher, to you real fast, don't we need to also tell the citizens, though, everybody's got to back off a little bit. Everybody has got to have a little respect for the other. You can't do it all from just one side.
Sure, there certainly needs to be a little bit of simmering down on both sides, I think. And, like Adam was saying, in order to police well, you have to build trust with the community. You have to get those sources. You can't just roll in with an armored vehicle and govern by military force. You really need to have a relationship with the people in these communities. And I think that's what's really missing in Baltimore right now.
I think that's the biggest problem right now. What you have is a lack of trust. The cops don't trust the citizens don't trust the cops. Everybody has got to work to basically build that back up again. But I will say this much, it certainly is the police department that has got to take that first step forward for everybody to feel more comfortable. Adam Thompson, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you both being with us. We'll talk to you again real soon, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Ed.
Take care.
All right, my pleasure. Stay with us, because when we continue right here on MidPoint, what one teacher did has some people saying, good for you. Others aren't that happy. We'll talk about it when we continue right here on MidPoint.